Well, hey Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. For this video, we're going to dive into the lore of the colony. Kind of look at what it means scientifically for a colony like the colonies in UC Gundam to exist, and where it all came from, because it's got a pretty cool background. But before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. And as you watch the video, if it's cool, give it a like. Well, let's get started. All right, so you're probably familiar with the colony. It seems to be the backdrop, kind of the basis of what happens in Mobile Suit Gundam, specifically in Universal Century. And you're probably familiar with it if you've gone through the original Gundam. You've seen the intro where you see the colony that drops. And sporadically as the series goes and the other ones, there's times where you see ships or mobile suits outside the colonies that are flying in and out. And I like it how it's very passive. It's just in the background. And then as things occur within a colony, like a battle, a hole gets blown into it, you see the air, the vacuum of space. It's not like anything's really explained to you. There's no exposition. And I think what's good about it is it kind of made this realistic background that really the characters are all about, because even the existence of the colonies lead to the differences between those living in space and living on Earth, given in to all this conflict. Now, the space colony itself in Gundam isn't just a UC thing. This is actually across other ones: Future Century, After Colony, After War, Correct Century, Cosmic Era, Anno Domini. And to be honest, let's see, I haven't really gone through all of it, but is that making up all of Gundam? Is there a Gundam where it doesn't exist at all? But they seem to be basically around the same concept idea, where it's trying to approach it with science to kind of make it like a science fiction that is realistic or grounded. Now, the original concept of the colony within Mobile Suit Gundam came from the O'Neill cylinder. Now, this is an actual concept proposed by American physicist Gerald K. O'Neill in his book from 1976, The High Frontier: Human Colonies in Space. And so the creators of Gundam took that concept and ran with it. This really has to do with the shape of the colony being a cylinder that leads to it having that gravitational feel to it. Also, where you could see areas that are the ground, where the gravity would pull the members living in the colony to the ground, and then have other parts of it that are see-through into space. And maybe the way it spins, it's able to mimic day and night. And really, here's a cool picture from the Wikipedia just showing the look of inside the colony. And you look at it and it just reminds you of Gundam. A lot of the detail we saw throughout the show in the background, and where you can tell there's a colony type look to it. Very reminiscent of what we're seeing here. But it goes even further than that, because in the Earth sphere, there's these Lagrange points, right? These Lagrange points are something that's probably familiar to you if you watched Gundam. I mean, you hear L5, L1, L4, what does all that mean? Where these sides are. And what those are the Lagrange points that have to do with gravitational forces. So by having objects within these Lagrange points, you're like the colonies or asteroids, you're then allowing it to have its own orbit that doesn't have to worry about falling into gravity of another object or moving around. It can kind of help them stick there. So within Mobile Suit Gundam in UC, we could see the Lagrange points here. We see L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, and you could see right next to them are the sides. So in L4, for instance, there's side 2 and side 5, and they orbit each other. I guess this is actually detailing, how the orbit works now. Are we seeing where they had left Earth, the trip to leave Earth and head out to the Lagrange point, or do they somehow move back in? I think it's interesting how it's documented here, but I want to say that's how it was launched. And over on L3, we see side 7, and we see Luna 2. And what's interesting about that is Luna 2 is a colony, but it's an asteroid. So those two bodies happen to be different than what we would see with the side 2 and 5 and L4. Over in L2, and I guess not too far from L1, you can kind of see where the moon is located, and that, I guess, affects the gravity and allows L2 and L1 to be in the situations they are. And it looks like in there they just have side 3 and side 4, so they don't have it where the objects are orbiting each other, but the moon kind of keeps them in orbit. And as we go, even in future Gundam stories, because of colony drops and because of changes of sides, these sides and colonies will move around a bit. And within each side, side 2, side 5, there are a number of colonies as well. And here's kind of a closer look where we're seeing how it looked in 0079, where all the colonies are. This could have been from the beginning of the Universal Century timeline. Once colonies were moved out into space, that's where they stayed. We can even see Solomon, Pizun, Abaku in the areas there. So that can kind of help map out, which would be a great future video, the scale of certain battles, like during the 1 Year War where things took place. We saw a lot of it ending near Abaku. And so you see 0087. So this is Zeta. So what are some differences we are seeing between the two here? Oh yeah, there we go. Side 4 and side 5, which I guess weren't too far from there, but then side 6 also moved. So that's interesting that there's shuffling of these sides. Now, what's interesting is that the number of colonies are working together, and then they shifted them all. Are they one colony? Because that's another thing to get into with these colonies outside of the reality that I was talking about here, these concepts, but within the Gundam universe, that there's even certain types of colonies based on when they were built, so they have some different systems in place. Now, the other main thing here, because it's what sets a lot of Gundam in motion, not only from the cause of having conflict between two groups of people, Earthnoids and Spacenoids, but also the concept of dropping a colony. And this is shared throughout Gundam, not only UC Gundam, but the idea is in the future, when you have humans in space and on Earth, there is a tactic that could be put in play, and that is sending a colony off course to drop on Earth, and it's happened a number of times. We have Operation British. That is the main one that really kind of started it all in a way, really pushed forward the 1 Year War conflict. And, you know, there was gassing involved also with these colonies. So not only were the colonies dropped, but because of their closed system that could be easy manipulated, any antagonist get it in there, release some sort of deadly chemical. And we actually see, you know, we hear about it happening. We see it in Unicorn. We see it, a bit of it in 08 MS Team, and even in Stardust Memory, it was mentioned. Even in MS Igloo, during some of the 1 Year War sections, even the Zeon soldiers are hearing about this, and then they have some interesting reactions because of how bad that is. So it even happened during Operation Stardust in Stardust Memory. I guess they had 2 colony cylinders and attempted to drop one onto Earth to avenge Zeon's defeat in the war at the hands of the Earth Federation. The cylinder landed in the American Midwest, where a large amount of the Federation's food supply was situated, resulting in the destruction of the supply. And then there's Operation Apollo. So that happened in 87. So that was during Zeta Gundam. They attempted, to drop the colony on the lunar city of Von Braun, but AU forces were able to stop that. And then there's a Dublin colony drop. Now, this is in Double Zeta. Yeah, Haman Karn had a colony drop down to Dublin. That's kind of where a lot of the main leaders of the Federation were at the moment. And I guess they did this so then they could invade Earth. Yeah, and then so during Char's counterattack, they had 5th Luna asteroid, which is a colony, but an asteroid dropped onto Lhasa in Tibet. All right, but for the good that was used for being able to allow humans and maybe other animals to live, you know, sunlight's the main thing here. So large mirrors are hinged at the back of each stripe of window. The unhinged edge of the windows points towards the sun. The purpose of the mirror is to reflect sunlight into the cylinders through the windows. Night is simulated by opening the mirrors, letting the window view empty space. This also permits heat to radiate to space. During the day, the reflected sun appears to move as the mirrors move, creating a natural progression of the sun angles. Although not visible to the naked eye, the sun's image might be observed to rotate due to the cylinder's rotation. Light reflected by mirrors is polarized, which might confuse pollinating bees. Oh, that's some extra detail there. So since Mobile Suit Gundam, I guess since that's almost like a science fiction idea, proposed concept, but based on science, since then, things change, technology changes, and there's some updates to it. So in 2014, a new construction method was suggested that involved inflating a bag and taping it with a spool constructed from asteroidal materials, like the construction of a composite overwrapped pressure vessel. And I have no idea what that is, but I will share that here. So that, again, that's probably some more high-tech technology. So in 1990, 2007, a smaller design derivative known as Kalpana 1 was presented, which addresses the wobbling effect of a rotating cylinder by increasing the diameter and shortening the length. The logistical challenges of radiation shielding are dealt with by constructing the station in low Earth orbit and removing the windows. Okay, very interesting. And I guess just some physics based on shape here. And then here's a NASA concept of it, which, again, pretty cool. We can see where a lot of it looks like what we see in Gundam. And even in Gundam, there are slight differences to some colonies, again, based on their manufacturing. They even have in-universe explanations for more advanced tech. So anyway, I hope you like that quick look at the space colonies from Mobile Suit Gundam, specifically Universal Century, although, again, they are in other Gundam properties. But it's really the background and basis of everything. It's what allows the humans to live in space so they can be mad at humans that live on Earth and vice versa. So I think it's great. I think, too, the fact that Gundam tried to be grounded in reality as they could with the concept of a colony in space. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that video, and we'll talk next time.